Welcome to the session and to this webinar that we have today. Event for chartered accountants and accountants, tax practitioners working with clients who are in trouble with SARS. So it's about stop wasting unbillable hours on your clients who are in trouble with SARS. So just a couple of house rules. My name is Delian and I am part of the tax debt consultant team. And I am going to ask you to keep your cameras on or off, whatever works best for you. We will spotlight the individuals who are presenting. We will spotlight Gerhard, we will spotlight my camera, we won't show your camera. So if I can just ask for that. So if there's any questions, you are welcome to type that in the chat box for us. Please do let us know. We would really like to make sure that this is an interactive conversation. So my job here is to hold the fort today, to keep the framework, and let me start to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Gerhard Linde. Gerhard holds a master's degree in taxation from the University of Pretoria, and he is a chartered tax advisor. This is a leading designation from the South African Institute of Taxation and is an internationally recognized and respected accreditation that is a mark of technical superiority and professional integrity. Gerhard is the Director of Tax Debt Compliance, and Tax Debt Compliance specializes in assisting businesses who are non-compliant with SARS to become fully compliant with SARS, and has specialized in this area for over 7 years. So our tax debt compliance has dealt with over 200 million rand of tax debt at SARS. The amount is actually 200,500,000 rand in total of tax debt, a huge number, and has reduced that number to 50 million rand in total tax debt payments. So you can clearly see that it's a reduction of a total tax debt reduction of 75% to all the clients that's worked with tax debt compliance before. So just to put that in context, if you look at the biggest tax debt reduction for tax debt compliance for one client, it was 97%, and tax debt compliance has 100% success rate, as in none of the clients who put their trust in tax debt compliance have lost anything owing tax. So tax debt compliance is compliant to the South African taxation law and acts. So everything that tax debt compliance does is legal, and tax debt compliance does not work for SARS. It's an independent organization. The reason why we give you this information is to understand the credibility of tax debt compliance, and also to understand where Gerhard comes from in this presentation to assist you with your clients who are behind on their SARS tax debt. So I'm going to ask Dolene. Dolene, just please post in the chat box the company profile of tax debt compliance. You're welcome to download it there if you want to learn more and understand more about the value that tax debt compliance could add to your clients. So just a quick disclaimer at the beginning of this presentation. The way that everything is presented here is also for you to understand that under no circumstances are you ever, when you decide to work with tax debt compliance, giving up your clients. This could be a potential additional service that you could give your clients. And if you don't decide to work with tax debt compliance, you will learn a tremendous amount through today's discussion to assist your clients with as well. So Gerhard, without further ado, I'd like to start with the questions, and I also want to ask if you have more questions, please type it in the chat box. We would like to make sure that we answer those questions. So we set up this as an interview style discussion, and Gerhard, really looking forward to your feedback on the questions. The first question that I'd like to ask Gerhard is, why is it difficult for accountants, chartered accountants, or any tax practitioners to work with SARS when there are problems? Please, Gerhard.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Linde. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for everyone who's been able to join. I hope you find this session informative and give you some background of tax debt, which is spoken a lot about in media, and you'll see a lot of articles posted about it. But how to deal with it always is not the easiest way, to distinguish and to take it head on, because we don't always know how to go about it, what's the options for the clients. And we hope from today's session that you'll take some of that into, park something in your mind somewhere, that there are options if you should ever have clients that have debt with SARS, and that there are other options and ways to deal with it, instead of, not knowing exactly what to do, and the clients, have to decide, well, am I closing down or what's my options? So, and getting straight into the Linde's question is that, why it's difficult for chartered accountants and auditors in general, because we all know that time is an issue, and we work by the clients that you have and the projects that you have lined up, and the tax things that needs to get done. There are always time frames and time periods which things needs to get done in. And the SARS issue always comes at an unknown time, when you probably don't have, when you don't have necessarily time to deal with this, apart from the deadlines that you are facing. The second part to that question is that there's going to be the knowledge of dealing with this, not knowing exactly, the options that you can offer your clients, or what's available to your clients in terms of finding a solution. And then I would also throw in that, there's also a lack of want to deal with SARS from a practitioner's point of view, or an accountant or auditor. Dealing with SARS is cumbersome. Also, it's not always in a mood to deal with them. So I think those three combined will take you into a sphere of, difficulties in dealing with SARS.
Thank you, Gerhard. One of the things you mentioned is that often the knowledge, there's just a lack of knowledge, understanding the processes, etc. So can you expand on that? What lack of knowledge exists in dealing with SARS? What is lacking?
Yeah, so I think the two major things that stand out for me is your expertise in dealing with this, and your experience. Experience helps a lot in any. You might not have the technical knowledge, and everyone can read the act for themselves. The options are contained within the act, but it doesn't necessarily give you the guidelines and the features of how to go about it. And we all know dealing with SARS in practice is a lot different than dealing with them, through what we've have in the act and what's supposed to happen. And those two combined really give you a unique perspective, and that's what we, pride ourselves on in terms of the last 7 or 8 years we've been dealing with them. Is we kind of know by now what's expected, and the angles that needs to be pursued in terms of getting results. What can you say, what can't you say, can you take no for an answer, those sort of things. So and it takes time to build up, because there's no one way, and every client is uniquely different, and no position is ever the same. So there's no real blueprint, if I can put it like that, although there might be underlying factors that might be the same, but each entity and client is very unique, and the debt that they might owe will vary as well. So and then also you're dealing with different personalities within SARS. No one is ever the same. You're not going to the same person we built a relationship on. So those things are very key, in the debt sphere, especially when dealing with SARS.
Thank you, Gerhard. So in your experience in working with different accountants and chartered accountants or tax practitioners, in working with their clients, what what do they believe before you start to work with them and their clients? What do they believe is possible in general?
Yeah, so when approaching SARS for the first time, or you're not comfortable in dealing with them, it's almost what they say have to go, even though they have certain rights and they can place obligations on you. I think the first thing that stands out that most people believe that you can't negotiate with SARS. They will tell you one thing and then you will have to abide by it, but it's not always as easy as that, and it's not white on black. There is some gray in between, because of the fact that they would want certain things. Let's call it, if money is owed, they would want it yesterday, and they will give you terms. For argument's sake, if you say, I don't know how to pay this, can you give us terms? And then they're just going to give you terms. And then you just have to sign on the dotted line. And that just means sometimes that you can't afford it. So there is definitely a way to negotiate with SARS. And then the unique thing is that what we try to do in approaching SARS is that we are basically telling them what we want and how we want it for the client, instead of asking them for terms. And I think there is a big difference in between those two lines. By asking SARS, you're giving them free rein to give you the answer and give you the deadlines. And if you don't know what you can stand or ask for, then you'll be in trouble. So that's what we pride ourselves. We try to give SARS the answer, and we want them to approve it on our terms, which then is obviously beneficial for the client in terms of keeping cash flow alive.
So Gerhard, as you said, you can do it, tax debt compliance can do it because you understand what you can ask for. So based on this framework that you are explaining, what are some of the solutions that are available for the clients of chartered accountants or tax practitioners, specifically for their clients who are non-compliant with SARS?
Yeah, there's two very specific sections in the Tax Administration Act that will cover a deferment and a compromise. A deferment is basically a repayment of your debt over a period, and that you can find in Section 167 of the Tax Admin Act. Again, like we come back to the previous points, that says you can obviously apply for terms, but it doesn't give you, the steps on how to do it, what you can ask for. It just basically says that you can repay the money. And therein also lies, a lot of experience and technical know in terms of deferment, because what is a deferment? Deferment means you're going to repay. If you ask SARS, they're going to give you a 6 months deferment, but necessarily it's not always that you're going to, be able to repay something in 6 months. So there is some ways around this, and that's basically where the experience comes in. And then the second part is the compromise, which is basically, in a layman's term, is a settlement agreement. If you owe SARS 10 Rand and you offer them 2 Rand and they accept it, they will write off 8 Rand. And that's now, capital, interest, penalties. So it's not necessarily always, interest and penalties. And that's where people don't always know or understand what the compromise actually means. And the compromise is, you can find that in Section 200 to 205 of the Tax Admin Act, which basically that gives you a bit more, things that SARS looks at and what needs to be adhered to in order for them to accept the compromise. But the compromise in a situation where it's not possible to repay and there's no way for them to trade out of money, which will be a lot of cases in our country and in our economic sphere, because people, once they are behind with a few VAT returns or a few pay-as-you-earn returns, it's hardly ever possible to catch up with those things. It's because they are recurring every second month or month. So it makes it basically impossible. And then people have a head in sand approach with these things, and then that just ramps up. So that's part of the things that we encourage, is that you need to tackle this thing head on. By putting your head in the sand, it's not going to go anywhere. From a practitioner and accounting and auditing point of view, you want your clients to do it, but because you don't know the options, they also feel a bit scared or wary, and then they don't know what to do, and then they just continue trading, and then it almost becomes a thing like we'll do something once SARS wakes up to the fact and try to put pressure on. That's just the nature of a human being. And we also will put things aside until it becomes a pressing matter. And And by that time, it might be too late, you know, in terms of the collection. SARS might have already gone into your bank account and attached money, you know, so then you're trying to play catch up. So we always try to be proactive. You know, if people are aware of the options beforehand, then it becomes easier to plan. And then also, you know, giving direction to someone. It's always easier to move once you have direction in your mind, moving towards a specific place. Then you can plan, then you can execute, and it also helps business owners in that sense, because that's the way they are wired as well. So if you can give someone a solution and how to get to the solution, you know, it becomes a workable plan. And that in those two sections that we've mentioned, there will be a solution somewhere, one or the other.
Thank you, Gerhard. So it's a lot of food for thought. We always say the proof is in the pudding. What are some of the latest success stories that you can share where tax debt compliance helped clients to become compliant with SARS, please?
Yeah, like you said, you mentioned the debt of 200 odd million, and in that there are so many success stories, almost impossible to rehash each one. And so we've created a testimonial page and our success stories on Facebook and LinkedIn and on our website. So you're more than welcome just to pop on there and have a look at some of the stories that we do. What's really special for me is, and that it's part of what I do, is because I can make an impact into businesses' lives. You basically turn a business around, you save a business, you save employees. And at the end of the day, once you've achieved that, you know, compromise of deferment, you know, the almost, you know, you get that gratitude and that feeling of accomplishment, which is really good for me in terms of what I do, and adds value to our economy. And just recently, you know, taking a few examples in between, and they range from this, you'll see they range very much. It's never one on the same. You can't say it's this industry or that industry, because it's all up in there. It's all cash flow related. So everyone can be in trouble, you know, by a change. You know, COVID came around and shut down businesses. So we had two distinct businesses. One is in the alcohol industry, and the other was renting out motorcycles for tourists. And in both of those circumstances, you know, that was shut down overnight. That basically shut the cash flows down, and we were able to secure both of them compromises. You know, writing off like 70 to 80% of the debt. And then, you know, we had recently, and it's weird when you look at it, but it's just to show that anyone can be in trouble. We recently assisted to senior counsel, which you expect people to be of high knowledge, you know, high expertise, but even they, in their lives, can run into trouble. And we assisted both senior counsel. For the one, you know, we got a 70 odd something percent write-off, and the other one we got a 50% write-off of their debt. So, you know, those things vary. Then we had a, you know, retired lady who had a video shop down at the coast, and that video shop closed down, and that debt was never resolved. She's on pension now, no way for her to pay, and we reduced her debt by also almost something like 90%. So, you know, you could see, you know, the various flows of who can owe SARS money. Is basically everyone.
Thank you, Gerhard. And we posted the testimonial page and the Facebook page. You're welcome to go and have a look there at some examples. So you've worked with this for almost 10 years. What's the average period with all the cases to solve a tax non-compliance problem with SARS?
Yeah, we always use this example how long as a piece of string. So it's very difficult to give people exact time frames, because there are certain periods and things that are out of your hands. You have your time period, which you need to have applications prepared and submitted. Then there are also timeframes for SARS to review and submit that applications to committees. And that is the biggest problem, because we are dealing with a state entity. Like you all know, they'll be at home, or they will be working, or they're on strike, or, you know, there's a backlog in application reviews, and it depends on which office you are at in SARS, or which branch you are at, you know, where is your case located. So all of these things make it extremely difficult. So we've had cases solved in a month or two, and then we still have a case that's spinning for 2 years almost in terms of difficulty and how to go about the resolution of that. So again, it will become specific to where the client finds themselves in, and then how long it will take to resolve. So it's a very difficult thing to manage, but the important part of this whole thing is that if you are sticking to the time frames and you're sticking within the process, SARS won't be able to proceed with their collection steps. So the client will be safe during that period, even if it takes longer to resolve. And I think that's the most important part, is that as long as you can stop collection steps, which at least holds things for the client, and they have, it's almost that safe knowing that things are moving in a direction, and they obviously can't. We get this a lot. People say I've just had a guy yesterday in my office. He said he hasn't slept for many years. So yeah, those things play a big role.
Thanks, Gerhard. I appreciate the context. So how can a chartered accountant or accountant work with tax debt compliance, and what happens with their clients if they want to work with tax debt compliance?
Yeah, this is probably one of the biggest concerns, because people might fear that they lose their clients because if they don't know how to deal with it, then they don't necessarily want to refer it to someone else. But what makes us unique is that we are a niche industry, so it means we are focused on tax debt and the resolution thereof. So we don't necessarily do, the income tax returns and annual financial statements. We have our accounting and tax partners that deal with those things. So it's not us as per se. So what it means is that if you want to refer your client, you will still stay your client. We will come in, as a experience and expertise, offering our experience and expertise and solving your client's issue. And then once they're clean, that's basically you starting from a clean slate, and it will still be your client. So that's basically what we found is the biggest obstacle, and just to provide a bit of clarity around that contentious point.
Thanks, Gerhard. So if a chartered accountant or accountant wants to refer clients to you, can they sit in the first meeting or the discussion, or how do you normally do that?
Yeah, we always encourage, if after the session, if you want to book a meeting or a discussion with me one-on-one, you are welcome to do so. We can hop on a call, just go through what we've just discussed. You'll always be involved in the process, because there will be things needed in order to do the application. So you'll be very much involved in the process, even though not dealing with SARS, but at least from the service that you provide, there will be things that's needed. So together with us, yourself and the client, working together as a collective to find solutions for the problem.
Thank you, Gerhard. So if someone wants to book a meeting, you are welcome to send an email to Gerhard. There's his email address. And if you hop onto the website on this link, there's also a telephone number where you can directly contact tax debt compliance. So let me ask, is there any other questions that anyone would like to raise? You're welcome to type it in the chat box directly to me, or another question for Gerhard, please.
So Gerhard, the first question, does tax debt compliance also negotiate to reduce debt for a deceased estate? So the comment here is probably half of the debt is currently interest and penalties.
Yeah, it's the same as with any taxpayer. The deceased estates are just a bit more difficult in the sense that they're basically fine, that they are final. So what it means is that if you've got money in the account or assets for that, SARS is a creditor in that estate. So it means that they have a claim towards the tax. So those are the more difficult ones to provide in terms of resolution, because if the estate has enough money to settle with SARS, they won't accept a compromise because the estate has enough to settle. So it's not impossible to do, to do the settlements, but I found especially estates are a lot harder in terms of getting, tax compromises, getting tax written off, because it's final. So So it's definitely doable. You can try, but like I said, it just depends on the estate. So if the estate has not enough to cover, then obviously it can be in a position to settle on a reduced manner. But it all depends on, what is the exact, assets and things in the estate to reduce that debt.
Excellent, thank you. Let me know, please, in the chat box if your question is answered or if you have more questions. Another question, I struggle with grounds for settlement or compromise. Apart from the first incidents and reasonable grounds, would you recommend a client apply for a compromise if they're not financially constrained?
So it's a very loaded and a long question, and it comes back to the expertise and the experience when you're looking at grounds for the compromise. So basically, the short answer to that is your financial position. So if your financial position gives rise to a compromise, and you can't afford to pay the full amount, then yes, there will be scope for compromise. SARS is also not, if I want to call it in brackets, stupid. If you've got enough assets and you've got enough liquidity, and you are able to repay your debt, they're not going to approve a compromise for that very argument. So the client's position, and each position will be unique to the client, will play a role in terms of the write-off. Like we've looked at the write-off figures, and that you'll see in terms of the average write-offs and the biggest write-off that we had, all of that varies. So I mean, it's just a simple example. If you owe SARS R1 million and you sit with 5 luxury vehicles versus someone who owes the same amount who drives an Uno, it's very clear that SARS will most likely give the compromise on a bigger settlement than the other person who owns the luxury vehicles. For argument's sake, you can sell some of the vehicles, put that into cash, and then make a bigger offer. So it's a difficult one. It's not a one fits all in terms of arguments.
Thank you, Gerhard. Then the next question, where do you apply under objections on e-filing, or do you email SARS directly?
Yeah, that's also part of the experience and expertise. It's not an objection or anything like that, so you won't find it under e-filing. The only thing that you will find under e-filing is the repayment. So you can under tax status, you'll be able to find the repayment. So you can request the repayment that goes through the system. I don't normally go that route in terms of it just takes too long. You don't ever get correspondence. It just lies there. So it's one of those things, like with same as objections, it takes forever to resolve. So you need to get to debt collection. That's the debt management office inside of SARS. It depends on where you are registered. Your client is registered because that will be the office handling your matter. So if you are in Gauteng, let's call it, you're registered in Alberton, then you obviously need to try locate someone in Alberton debt collection to try and manage the situation. So that is the most tricky part, because you need someone to deal with, and to get to that someone, that's always been the problem in terms of how exactly do we get to someone.
Thank you, and that's where your expertise comes in as well, Gerhard, in handling multiple of these cases over years and years. And that's the benefit of working with tax debt compliance, to understand how those procedures work, and you can understand also some of the IP, the intellectual property of the company, and handling this for your clients. So thank you for that, knowing what you are doing. The next question is, we found that you get different answers from different staff members at different branches of SARS. When it comes to compromises or even specialist cases, surely it helps if you can build a relationship with a particular SARS office. Do you find that that's the case, Gerhard?
Yeah, in an ideal world, that would be ideal. If you could have one committee sitting with and one allocated officials dealing with compromises and the like, then at least it helps. But unfortunately, SARS is so big, our country is big, so you can't have that. So that's why you have the branches. It's exactly the same with objections. It goes to different people. Some make mistakes, some don't. Some know what they're doing, some don't know what they're doing. So again, it comes back to the expertise and experience. If you know this person is wrong, you just have to keep pushing until you get the answer that you need, and try escalate if you can to get to the right people. So those are all part of the stumbling blocks and the things that you deal with, especially if you're looking for a specific result. So no, it's I get 100% the question, and it's a struggle.
Thank you, Gerhard. Does tax debt compliance do or handle VAT investigations?
I assume that if you're pointing to VAT audits, they know, or even if it's criminal, they know. So what we do is we deal basically with the end result. So after audits, after assessments, after additional assessments, that is not, basically you have to agree on the debt. So whatever is final in your statement of account, we deal with that. So if you're still not happy with the debt, obviously, before you want to compromise or anything like that, the routes for objections are available. And that's, we not specifically deal with that. We do objection here and there or an appeal, but for most, we've got, either use someone like we are expertise in tax debt matters. You'll have the same people dealing with the objections and the appeals.
Thank you. And another question, how does the fee structure work for tax debt compliance?
Yeah, sure. So basically, we need to establish what's the debt outstanding to SARS, and then based on the debt outstanding, there's a fee structure that will be determined in terms of the set management fee. That will be a full fee to cover the process of SARS until the debt could be resolved. So we'll charge a flat fee to the client. They know upfront what they'll be paying with terms on the agreement. Then they can decide if they want to proceed or not. So the terms are fixed. So it's not time-based. It's also not result-based. So it's basically the fee given to manage the process with SARS. So we found that it's a very happy medium. The client knows exactly what they're paying with the terms, and they upfront can make the decision, do they want to continue with this route or not.
Thank you, Gerhard. So please, again, I want to invite you, if there's more questions or if you need more clarity, please type your questions in the chat box. Another comment, I have 2 clients that has children with disability. And due to errors when submitting, both are owing excess of 100,000 Rand. I've done both NOO and NOA, but this is taking so long. I have, can't see this comment here on the side. I have returns for 3 years, but nothing is getting finalized. Do you have the ability to escalate the returns as the debt is currently taking all the funds that should be refunded to them?
Yeah, again, to me, it feels like a bit more on the, like you said, objection and appeal, and then what's next on that dispute resolution timeline. So it's not within my own power just to escalate things out of the blue. You need to follow the channels. But some of the things that I can recommend is that if you've done a notice of an appeal, an objection, and it's taking beyond the time frame, that you do just launch a complaint on e-filing, so you just can get a reference and then go straight to the Ombud. The Ombud's really good in terms of statutory timings, that if they are in the wrong, and if you present your case, they are very good with that. That I've seen in the past in terms of getting the appeals and objections sorted. So just from the top of my head, that makes the most sense to me. If those appeals and things are not successful, you obviously have the chance to go to tax court, maybe even High Court if you'd like, but I mean, it just depends on the monetary value. Then if there is a sense where, it feels that, we're not winning, then you can, the compromise can be a solution to that problem in terms of, okay, well, we don't necessarily agree with the assessments, but it's taking us so long and it's costing us so much money. So let's just try settle with SARS. And nothing prohibits you from trying, or then if it fails, to continue with your steps afterwards in terms of what's next on the dispute resolution timetable. What's the next step for me to take.
Thank you, Gerhard. Another question, what are the odds that SARS will agree to an entity that has a debt for VAT but that has high assessed loss, which is likely to accumulate over the next 3 years to come because the entity is not profitable, that we would like to use that assessed loss to offset the VAT liability because of cash flow constraints, as its revenue is seasonal.
So it's getting very, very technical, but I can tell you this, you can't use an assessed loss to offset taxes. It's not a realized tax. Assessed loss is only there to, put off against profits that you make. So you can't just switch that into a tax and then switch that over into VAT and then also a refund. It doesn't work like that. But what it does do is that it shows that you are in trouble. So that opens the door for the compromise. So you're going to have to find funds to settle from somewhere else. But what you will do as part of the compromise requirements is that you have to give up your assessed loss. So giving up the assessed loss, technically, basically, it adds to the motivation of settlement. So within the compromise process, you will say to SARS, we'll offer you X amount, but we also are willing to forego our assessed loss. So when SARS do grant you the compromise, they will take that assessed loss from your books as well. So it's just part of the negotiation. And obviously, if you look at the Act, it's a requirement. So if you do settle, SARS requires you to forego your assessed loss.
Thank you, Gerhard. Another question, have you ever been unsuccessful with a case, and how do you deal with clients in that instance?
It's difficult to say what is unsuccess or what is being unsuccessful, because if you're just talking about you owe R1 million, we applied for a settlement of 500,000 and we were declined and they don't want to review it, then that's probably unsuccessful. But you can't ever guarantee an amount, what the settlement will be. There will always be a chance to renegotiate and see if you can up the offer or change the application or anything in that sense. But there might come a time when SARS tells you, listen, we're not going to, based on your position, let's take the example of the guy who had 5 luxury vehicles. That's not in my control. If SARS feels you have enough money to repay and you can't argue against it, then they will not review or allow your compromise, and then you have to go into deferment. So if you can then switch over from compromise into deferment and you repay the debt, that's a success. So it doesn't mean you're unsuccessful in terms of solving the debt. You might just have been unsuccessful in terms of negotiating a compromise settlement. So yes, we've had a case or two in the past where SARS said we're not going to take a compromise because your client is well enough able to pay us the money, so we'd rather take terms. Then it's out of your hands. You can take it to the High Court if you would wish, but that obviously you need to take consideration of the time spent and the money you want to spend, and then obviously taking the chance that the High Court won't find the same, and then switching your strategy from compromise to repayment.
Thank you, Gerhard. Another question. Can you confirm my understanding that any saving obtained from a S200 compromise and the resultant income item in the financials is exempt from further tax?
Yeah, so you can obviously have a tax on a tax situation. So it is a write-off, but it won't result into a tax. I don't know exactly on top of my head the journal in terms of the accounting journal, but it's a zero tax effect. So SARS will write the money off, your account will be clean. Obviously in your books it will come in as a when you've obtained a gain in terms of your if you've written off let's say in that example of 500,000 rand settlement on the R1 million, it's a 500,000 saving, if you want to call it that, saving over a write-off. But no, that doesn't come back to being taxed again. So there will be an offset journal in terms of clearing that from a tax calculation point of view.
Thank you, Gerhard. So another question, what should a tax practitioner study to deal with these matters more successfully? And what sort of jobs would allow me to gain experience in this specialty?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's nothing for you to study. It's the school of real life. You have your basically you have your tax knowledge in terms of what the Act says you can do. Like we said at the beginning, you have your you apply for the compromise or settlement based on the Act in terms of Section 200 or Section 167. So you can study the Act. I mean, that's just part of being a tax practitioner, you know, making use of the acts and the sections available to you. But there's no school to go to in terms of teaching you how to do a compromise or teaching you how to. That comes back to the experience and the expertise in the field. The longer you do it, you know, that's basically your school. And that's a school that I had to go to, and that's why we're sitting here today in terms of what we offer, because I've done the hard yards in terms of, you know, what can we do, what can't we do. So yeah, it's a very what's the right word? I'm struggling to find a practical school.
Thank you, Gerhard. Yeah, very practical school indeed, and a school that goes with many, many long hours and working and creating a system and creating something that works, and with a lot of passion behind it as well, for sure. So we've had a number of questions, and I want to remind you that we will be sending out more information about tax debt compliance. So as Gerhard said during the course of the discussion, it's often a struggle, it's often a frustration to move to get the compromises or the deferments moved and to get to an end result. And that is the expertise that tax debt compliance brings, with you still keeping your clients on board, you being responsible for them. This is just an additional service to really get relief, and for the businesses to stay open, for business owners to still be able to add value to the economy in these important times. So we'll definitely, we look forward to hearing from you, hearing more questions. You're welcome to send a direct email to Gerhard. Gerhard, your email is linde@taxdc.co.za, am I correct?
Yes, correct.
So just typing it here that you have it in the chat, linde@taxdc.co.za. And then you're also welcome to reach out to us on our website, as we gave it to you before. That's taxdc.co.za. That's the website. There are multiple contact forms on there. And then also, of course, on LinkedIn, you're welcome. We did post the LinkedIn address there. So please reach out, connect with us. I think the main thing is, let's keep those businesses open. Let's keep them running. That's a big passion for Tax DC, to add value to the economy and get the relief to the right business owners. Gerhard, any closing comments from your side?
No, it's like, thank you for everyone for taking the time. It's a topic that's not mostly discussed. It's unknown in most cases. But we thank you everyone for your time. I hope you're enlightened a little bit. And then, yeah, we look forward to maybe working with you in the future.